Hello again. For this activity in Module B, we are wearing our champion hat once again, but this time we are focusing on goal number 3, which is that really wordy one, but very important, recognizing and making a plan to close equity gaps in CS education. So we're going to dig right in. We don't have a whole lot of time for this activity, but I'm really excited. This activity will kind of be a foundation for others coming up in Module C and beyond. If you haven't already done so, there is a link to a kind of a participants worksheet in Schoology. You may want to pause at some point and go grab that link because we will be using it through this session. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to be using this metaphor a whole lot. If you've ever spent any amount of time with me, I have to apologize. I use a lot of metaphors. It works in my brain, but I didn't come up with this one, so I'm grateful that someone else did. I want you to imagine carrying around a backpack. And you're not the only one, we all do. So imagine everybody that you encounter carrying around this visible backpack. You can see the backpack, but you can't see what's in it. And what is in it for each person are those unique things, well, those things that make them unique. So think about what kinds of things would be in your backpack. People may not see them, but you know that they're there. That backpack obviously is very special to us and contains a variety of things. Some of those things in our backpack may be things that we really love about ourselves and we know make us awesome. Some of them might kind of weigh us down sometimes and create issues for us that we really wish we didn't have to deal with. Some of them we don't even really notice. Those are those items that are kind of like buried down deep in a pocket you forgot was even there in your backpack. All right, so we're going to keep using this metaphor, but I'll try to talk us through it. Okay, so this is where we're going to use that kind of worksheet that I mentioned at the beginning of the module. It is the backpacks and identity sheet. It's a Google Doc, so you can just make a copy and type right within it. We are going to use this doc again in another module. So save it to your drive, or if you want to stop and print it and you want to write it by hand, whatever works for you. But we're going to be using it through the rest of this activity right now, and we're going to come back to it again later down the road, just to let you know. Okay. So I led off with those questions about like if you could imagine your backpack and what's in your backpack. And now what I'd like for you to do is actually jot down those ideas. So whether you do it digitally or you have that hard copy version, you'll see those categories that you can fill in notes about yourself. So you can fill in, fill in those little those details about yourself and any feelings that maybe you're having about it right now. Please take time to do this. You can pause the video here. I'm not going anywhere, but when you're ready, start it again and we'll move on. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to fill in the what's in your backpack page. We are going to think about those components and those characteristics or those items in your backpack. Those are what we call identities. We don't have a single identity. We have lots of them, right? Like they form us collectively. So we're going to go through some questions for reflection about your identities and what's in your backpack. I'll try to give a few examples or ideas along the way, but I don't want it to seem like this whole session is all about Sarah. And I don't want you to get the feeling that there's like one right or wrong answer. These questions are meant for you to think about your identities, but not be bogged down by any examples or feeling like you have to go in one direction or another. Okay, so we've got our backpack sheet ready to go. Looking at your backpack sheet, those identities that you've listed about yourself, I want you to consider which identities have the strongest effect on how you see yourself. Okay. Now, these could be positive, negative, or kind of a mix of both. Maybe you are very strongly connected to your ethnicity as a point of pride. That could be kind of positive, right? Maybe maybe your body image is something that has a big effect on how you see yourself, and it's a challenge. Be kind of negative. Maybe you don't really see it as being good or bad, it's just what it is, but your gender is definitely part of who you are. It could be kind of a little bit of both or neutral. So I'd like for you to take a moment to look over your backpack and identity sheet or page. And if you wouldn't mind, please do highlight and indicate which of those identities have the strongest effect on how you see yourself. Maybe one or two. Once you're ready, we'll move on to our next question. All right, here's our next question. And this one's difficult for a lot of folks. If you were to eliminate two of these identities on your page, which would those be and why? Now, when we say eliminate, using our backpack metaphor, it's hard, but I want you to imagine if we eliminated those identities, they would no longer be relevant or observable to anyone else. They wouldn't have an impact. Okay. Please don't skip this question, even if it's like hard for you to think about it. Even if you're okay, if you're like, I don't know, I'm okay with all my identities, I don't care. Think hard and select two. Even if they're like soup, all of them are important to you and you're really struggling, you're like, I can't pick. How can I pick? Think hard and narrow it down to two. You could potentially choose to eliminate an identity you have a positive relationship with, and that's okay. But you might, I ask that you take a moment, pause the video, and consider those identities on your page, and select the two that, if you had the opportunity or were forced to, you would eliminate. You can note that by using a strike through or another formatting option, whether you're doing hard copy or digital. And when you're ready, we'll move on to our next question. Okay, I asked you not to skip the last question, and here's why. See, it kind of connects, doesn't it? So in the last question, I asked you if you needed to, or you were asked to eliminate two identities, which one would they be? And this is kind of in the opposite direction, the flip side. Now, which ones would you absolutely not eliminate? And that's probably that maybe have already come up in your head when you were trying to answer the previous question. You may have looked at your sheet and was like, nope, not that one. These, for this question, we're considering like those that are like the non-negotiables for you, right? Those elements or identity or characteristics that are so important to you that you are not letting someone take them out of your backpack. Okay. So take a few moments and look through your page, and you can note those by bolding the category, or if there's a color code system you're choosing to use, whatever works for you. Okay. So we've got just two more questions about this and using our backpack metaphor for today, but we're going to shift our focus. So far, we've been thinking all about ourselves. Love it. Super fun to get personal, right? But now I want you to shift your focus to your students. Regardless of what role you play, I want you to think of the students that you interact with, and even maybe to a larger extent, the students in your district. We're going to think about the backpack, identities, and our students. I'm getting chills. Here we go. Using that backpack metaphor, think about how maybe your students feel about what's in their backpack. Do you think that maybe there are times that your students feel weighed down by the components of their backpack? Do you think that they might have strong feelings if you did this activity with them and asked them which are the most impactful on them which ones are their non-negotiables, which ones they would eliminate. I want you to take some time and consider how students' experiences at school might make them feel like they actually have to answer those questions in real life. So we spent a few moments thinking about like if we had to kind of shut down or leave behind our identities and not carry them in our backpack. But in real life, are there times when maybe our students experience that? Or have they encountered things with their peers or with adults at school or the system as a whole that have made them make choices about how to present themselves and how to handle the unique things that make them them? Take a few moments to consider that. Look over your page. Think about what you were just going through, answering those questions about yourself. Maybe try to take on the perspective of a student, maybe a student that you've worked closely with recently, and run down that page and think through those questions from their perspective. All right. So I said we didn't have much time together, and that's because I want to give you more time to think about that question about your students and discuss with others in the Schoology discussion board. But it's kind of a two-parter here, right? Thinking about moments or experiences that our students have had that have impacted them because of who they are in specific ways. And making that connection to the work that we do together in the CSinPA pathway and the awesome work that you're doing in your community for computer science education across the board. How does knowing or even just taking that moment of pause to think about your student's identity, how does that impact your work ahead? And I guess I'm not trying to get at like some huge big like now that I know this, I'm ready to take on the world. I just want you to be thoughtful about really paying attention. And now that you're thinking about your students' identities and even your own and your colleagues' identities, how will those thoughts come into play as you continue down this path or this journey in CS this year and beyond? Okay, before we move on, there's a few things to wrap up with this activity. Number one, we'd love it if you would pause here and grab that instructional design workbook. Question number one, analyze context. There's a great spot there so you can jot down maybe some of the things that you've been thinking about with your students' identities. Now, you also might be thinking to yourself, Sarah, what's this have to do with the entire pathway? Well, let's revisit our goals for the journey. Taking a look at number three, we know that this is heavy stuff. Look, it's even the biggest goal we have. When we see each other again in the upcoming modules, we're going to spend some more time thinking about identity and this idea of expanding access and equity. As I've already mentioned in the previous recording, we wanted to spend some time today with this activity so that you can start thinking and integrating those thoughts into your pilot project and your instructional workbook. So here's where you can share your thoughts. You can capture your thoughts in the Schoology discussion board and in your instructional design workbook, number one, students. We will see you again soon. We look forward to engaging with you more and digging into this big idea about engaging all of our students and honoring their identities.